Hello guys, and welcome to my Magicka Dragonknight Dual Destro Staff Speedy Mist PvP build. This is a very cool Magicka DK. As you can see there, it's very fast, and it deals a lot of damage with a dual heavy attack kind of build. So I hope that you guys enjoy this little bit of intro footage here. Something that I did want to say is that I don't actually have a ton of footage for this build because I'm actually going to be moving on to a different spec entirely with my Magicka Dragonknight. So I did want to share what I had gotten together here with you guys because I'm actually going to be going away from the dual staves. But I did want to show you guys the build, a bit of an update on the dual Destro staff build we had done in the past. This build is going to be really good for open world PvP because you're very mobile on it, and that's something that a DK normally really struggles with. So I think having access to that mobility is going to be something that you guys will probably really enjoy on your Dragonknight, I think. The mobility goes a long way into just survival in world PvP, and especially in like larger scale Zerg combat. Anyhow guys, let's jump into that build. Alright guys, so let's take a look at the stat page on this build. So to start off, we are a Dark Elf. Dark Elf is going to be your best bet for a Dragonknight, I think, all around, just because Dark Elf deals the most amount of damage. They get that 7% flame damage, as well as the 9% max Magicka. Now, if you want to go for a more sustained route, Argonian's going to be a great option, or somewhere in the middle is going to be a High Elf, who's going to have the mix of the sustain and the damage as well. Taking a look at our stat page, we have got everything dumped in max Magicka because we are playing the Magicka spec. 37k Magicka, 24k HP, and almost 15k stamina. So a nice amount of max Magicka on the Dragonknight here. And yeah, honestly, we are running 3 Swifty traits on this build too. So to have nearly 40k Magicka is pretty awesome. We don't use a damage shield on this build, but if you want to use a damage shield, it's totally up to you. You have the Magicka pool to do it on this spec. The max HP is pretty good, coming in at 24k for a non-damage shield. A little bit on the low side, but we do have a decent amount of physical spell resist, so we should be okay with that much HP. And then the max stam coming in at 14,600 is actually really awesome, gives us a lot of stam to work with, and we are playing a pretty heavy roly-poly build, so we're going to do a lot of rolling and quite a bit of blocking on this build as well, as you always should in PvP. So the max stam pool is going to play into that. Our sustains don't look too terribly impressive at first glance, save maybe the stamina recovery. Almost 1100 stam recovery on a mag build is really nice, especially the Dragonknight. But we do have quite a lot of sustain on this build, and you should have no sustain issues on this spec. We are running Elemental Drain on our Lightning Staff, so that is going to be plus 600 Magicka recovery here. On top of that, we have the Combustion passive, as well as Battle Roar is going to give us a large amount of sustain on this build as well. So when we buff up here, you see our buffed recoveries actually get pretty sweet on this build. So we have a huge amount of sustain, and you should have no problems staying alive and having enough resources on this build. So taking a look at our spell damage, we have a nice amount of spell damage on this build, coming in at just under 3,100. We are running the Infused Staff on the Shacklebreaker Inferno Staff, so when we buff up with our Infused Staff, we get up to 3,700 spell damage on this build, 37k Magicka to go with it. Very nice offensive stats, I think, for the Magicka Dragonknight, and then on top of it, we have Minor Berserk because we are running Slime Craw as well. Our spell crits coming in at 51%. This is super awesome for our damage and our healing on this build. Our spell and physical resistance when we buff up are coming in at 20k spell resist, almost 21k, and then just under 18k physical resist. Nice amounts of resistance for a light armor build. This is kind of where you want to be, I think, at a minimum for PvP. And then our crit resist is coming in at just under 1900. Now, I have the wrong traits on my gear, so if I had the ideal traits, we should have 2100 at least critical resist on this build. So that is something that I did want to mention. Our spell penetration is coming in at 8,600, and we're running Elemental Drain, so we actually have almost 13k spell pen on this build. Huge amounts of penetration, very nice. Actually, almost 14k spell pen, so huge amounts of penetration. This is going to allow us to deal huge amounts of damage to whoever we hit with the Elemental Drain. So if you find yourself in a fight where you're fighting a tankier target and it's going to be a longer drawn-out fight, Elemental Drain is really going to be an excellent ability to just kind of make that fight go in your favor. For the buffs that we're running, as I had mentioned, we have Minor Berserk coming from our Slime Cross set. We are running the Apprentice Mundus. If you want to use a damage shield, you can go for the Mage Mundus here, so you have almost 40k Magicka on this spec. That being said, though, the Apprentice is better overall damage and healing, and that is why we have gone with this, because we are not using a damage shield. We are a Stage 4 Vampire. This is very important for Mist Form, because Mist Form is a Vampire skill. And then for the food that we're using, we went with the max health and max magicka food. So this is a really good option for this spec. You can go with the tri-stat food if you like. The tri-stat food's going to be great if you just want a little bit more stamina sustain, but I don't think the stamina sustain or the bigger stamina pool is a necessity. And also you can go for a Witch Mother's Potent Brew or the gold alternative to it, the Clockwork Citrus Fillet. That being said, you really don't need the stamina or the magicka recovery in my opinion, so you're totally fine going with the blue max stat food on this spec. Alright, so let's take a look at the gear on this build. So to start off, we are running a 2-piece Slime Craw. This is going to be great for the spell crit that it gives and that Minor Berserk, 8% increased damage. Really, really nice for the Mag DK, as that is a buff that we're missing. The next set that we have is Amber Plasm. Amber Plasm is going to be great just for a huge amount of max stat that it gives to our sustain, and the 2-3-4 piece is great for damage as well. So this was picked purely because of the amount of max stat that it gives, just giving us huge stats to kind of make up for the fact that we're running the Swifty traits. Honestly, that was kind of my goal here, is make up for the lacking stats that we have in Swifty, which brings us to the next set, a 5-piece Shackle Breaker, and we are running it on both our staves here. And the 5 Shackle Breaker is going to do exactly what Amber Plasm does, give us a huge amount of max stat to make up for the fact that we're kind of missing out on the max stat from the Swift traits here. Now, something I did want to say is that if you do want to run a higher damage alternative of this build, you can definitely go for a 5-piece Elegance or even a 5-piece Torx Pact instead of the Shackle Breaker. And this build has really good sustain, like I said, so you will be able to drop this set and still have enough sustain on it. So it's totally up to you if you guys wanted to do a higher damage alternative. But if you want the more rounded alternative, Shackle Breaker is going to be the best kind of rounded set for it. So taking a look at the traits that we have on our weapons to start off, like I had mentioned, we have the Infused Flame Staff. The reason I went with Infused on the Flame Staff is because we have pretty big burst from our leap on our AoE bar, as well as our Lightning Staff heavy attack deals quite a lot of damage itself, because each tick will get the bonus from our heavy attack bonus. So that kind of leaves our Fire Staff bar as more of our intro combo slash buff bar. And the reason we went for Infused is because most of the time you're going to be opening with your Fire Staff and then swapping to your Lightning Staff. And this means that you're just going to deal the greatest amount of damage and have this Infused buff up as often as possible on this build. You can definitely do a Nirnhone Fire Staff if you want to have the bigger Fire Staff attack. Totally up to you guys. That being said, it just makes the intro combo a lot more awkward and kind of lets your opponent know you're there if you poke them with a lightning light attack to begin with. So the Infused was chosen, of course, for that weapon spell damage glyph, going to give us a huge bonus to our spell damage on this build. And then on the Lightning Staff, we have gone with Nirnhone, the best trait for all-around damage and healing increase. And then we've gone with the Flame Damage Enchant. And the reason I went with the Flame Damage Enchant here is because it is actually going to proc burning sometimes. And that's going to be great because it's going to give us our Combustion passive, which is just going to play into giving us better sustain while we remain offensive on the Dragonknight. For the jewelry, as I had mentioned, we have gone with the 3-piece Swift. Swift is an excellent option, I think, for the light armor DK. Swift plus Mist is really cool because you just essentially are mobile. You can kite Zergs on this build. You can get away from things. When you're using your sprint, you're approaching speed cap, so you're very, very fast, and you have a lot of resistance to snares and immobilizations as well. So the Swift pairs really nice on this build, and yeah, honestly, it's kind of a treat to play a mobile DK. If you guys have always played a slower Dragonknight build and you always felt like you wanted to try something that didn't get locked down so easily, I think this is a really, really good option to try out. So there you go, and then we have gone with the spell damage enchants on the jewelry. The spell damage is going to be the best all-around option for damage and healing. For the gear, you want to go with, I think, full Magicka or full tri-stat glyphs, depending kind of on your preference over more damage or more health slash sustain. So it's kind of up to you. You can use a mix of the two if you want as well. for the traits on the gear, you want to go with 3 pieces of impenetrable and 4 pieces of well-fitted. I actually don't have the right traits here just because I don't have the stones to transmute my amber plasm. That being said, though, you want to aim for that 3 impen, 4 well-fitted. It's just going to give you the best all-around defense/sustain on this build. The well-fitted goes really a long way to that roll dodge and sprint sustain as well. Alright, so let's take a look at the skills that we're using on this build. So we're going to start off on the Fire Staff bar, which is kind of, like I said, our intro/buff bar for this build. It still deals a huge amount of damage though, so we can do these really big Fire Staff heavy attacks for sure, but they're going to be even more deadly when you pair them with the swap to the Lightning Staff heavy as well. So to start off, the first ability we have is Stone Giant. This is a personal favorite stun of mine for the Dragonknight because it does so much darn damage. Look at that, almost 6k tooltip. It'll deal 100% more damage if you successfully stun the target with it. So yeah, this actually has higher tooltip damage than the whip does. So you can deal huge amounts of damage at the 41 meter distance and stun the target. And this comboed with your lightning and fire staff heavy attacks is all that you really need to wreak total havoc at a distance with this build. You can deal like 20k damage in half a second with this spec to a player, and this is part of how you're going to do that. The next ability that we have is Race Against Time, the new Psijic ability. This is absolutely fantastic for the Dragonknight. It's going to give us Minor Force that is going to buff our outgoing damage, which is super awesome. On top of it, it is going to give us Major Expedition and reduce the cost of sprint by 50% for 3 seconds. Super fantastic because it's going to make sprint very, very cheap, very, very not taxing on our stamina bar, and that's going to allow us to just have great stamina sustain mixed with this and well-fitted on the Magicka DK. Which is exactly what we want. The next ability that we have is Elusive Mist. This is the Speedy Mist. Very, very nice. This paired with the sprint that almost reaches speed cap, we are going to have one heck of fast DK, and it is going to be able to get away from a lot of things, and you're going to be able to play some really cool kite game on your Dragonknight thanks to these abilities here. Mist is also great because it's going to reduce the incoming damage you take by 75%. This is really nice because you can kind of use it to just soak up big amounts of incoming damage or suppress incoming dot damage. Oblivion damage from the slowed set, for example, will go through the Mist form, so that is something that maybe you want to run the Purge for if you take too much Oblivion damage on this build. We definitely have room for the Purge on it, so that is something that I do want you guys to keep in mind. And then finally, Mist is going to make us immune to disabling and immobilization effects, which is going to be really nice for preserving our stamina as well. The next ability that we have is Molten Armaments. This is a fantastic skill for 2 reasons. Number 1, Major Sorcery. Super great for that very long 40-second spell damage buff. And then on top of it, we get that big increase in our heavy attack damage. And that's going to be really nice for this build as well. That increased heavy attack damage is going to go a long way to our dual staves, really causing some hurt at a distance and even close range on this spec. So Molten Armaments, fantastic buff skill for this build. Definitely need it for this spec to be effective. The next ability that we have is Dragon Fire Scale, and this is going to be a reflect to just reflect kind of projectiles. A really nice ability for a squishier Dragonknight because it's going to give you the ability to kind of take position in a more open field and not have to worry about range projectiles as much. So the reason I went with the Dragon Fire Scale morph is because I really like the additional damage on reflect, and we have a lot of snare counter thanks to Elusive Mist. That being said, if you do want to have the extra snare counter, you can definitely take the other morph for the snare removal that it provides. For the ultimate on this bar, we have gone with Eye of the Flame. 2 reasons why we have this bad boy. Number 1, Eye of the Flame is going to be super trolly with Speedy Mist. Yeah, Mist form plus Eye of the Flame, and you're really fast in it. I thought that would be fun. I hope you guys enjoy playing around with that. And then number 2, this is going to be our Fire Staff Destro skill, and it's going to give us that 8% bonus damage to our fire abilities, as well as giving us an increased chance to cause burning on our Fire Staff, and that is actually very important because it's going to play into our sustain with our combustion passive as well. Taking a look at the Lightning Staff bar, the first ability that we have here is Draw Essence. This is one of 2 AoE skills that I would recommend you use on this bar in this spot. Draw Essence is really nice because it's going to give you that big amount of healing as well as that huge burst of damage afterwards, after the 2.5 seconds that you use it, and that burst of damage is actually really nice to pair with Ferocious Leap. Now the other option that you can do is go for Talons morphed to Burning Talons. Burning Talons is going to deal more damage than Draw Essence will, however, Burning Talons is going to snare your target as well. And the big advantage of that is that it pairs better with your Eye of the Flame. So it's kind of up to you which ultimate you want to use more on this build is kind of going to dictate which ability I think you want to slot here. The next skill that we have is Volatile Armor. Volatile Armor is super fantastic. It's going to give us both our major physical and spell resistance buffs, which is going to be great for our survivability. On top of it, it's going to be a fantastic AoE. Look at that, almost 10k tooltip when we buff up. Quite a bit of damage for an armor-based AoE. And then on top of it, it's going to reflect damage back to the attacker when they hit us with direct damage attacks, which is super great. And I think something that is really cool about this ability that I want to mention is that it has a 10-meter radius. Correct me if I'm wrong, but for a regular ability, I think that's the highest radius that a player-based ability has. And this is just great because it's going to be really fantastic for pulling people out of stealth. Really, that huge radius means that people will have to be quite a ways away from you to not get pulled out of stealth by this AoE. And then the next ability we have is Elemental Drain. This is a super great skill, I think, for this build for a few reasons. Number one, it's going to put Major Breach on the target. This is going to allow us to achieve 13 to 14k physical penetration on top of our impressive offensive stats. This means that we're going to hit really hard thanks to this. This is also here for that minor Magicka steal. This is going to give us that Magicka sustain when we really need it on this build in those longer prolonged fights where you find that your sustain might be lacking. This is really going to make up for any sustain problems that you may have. And then finally, this is our Destruction Staff skill, giving us access to that bonus AoE damage as well as our concussion passives on our Lightning Staff bar. The next ability that we have is Inner Light. This is purely kind of a slotted bonus skill. It's going to give us that max Magicka bonus as well as the spell crit buff. This ability you can definitely replace with another skill such as Purge if you feel like you need a counter to Purge. However, if you're going to replace this ability with Purge, you kind of give up the ability to run Tri-Stat potions on this build if you want to have the Major Prophecy buff. So it's kind of up to you if you want to take this ability off. If you do need to get the Major Prophecy buff from elsewhere. So that's just what I have to say about it. The next skill that we have is Coagulating Blood. This is a fantastic heal for a Magicka DK. We've got a nice tooltip on it as well, coming in at 8,600, so a really nice beefy tooltip. And then on top of it, we get a bonus depending on our missing health. So this is just going to be our primary heal for the build. Very, very nice heal. And we're going to have that constant 8% healing bonus up from our other Earthen Heart skills, so it's going to be actually like a fairly good heal for the build. And then finally, for the ultimate, we have Ferocious Leap. This is going to be your primary ultimate. I think for this spec, you can use Eye of the Flame more if you like, but I think Ferocious Leap is ultimately better. Totally up to the individual, I think, though. Huge amounts of burst damage in an AoE, and then on top of it, it's going to stun everyone that you hit and give you a 50% of your health damage shield. So a really great offensive, defensive ultimate for the Dragonknight, and it offers a little bit of mobility as well. Alright guys, so let's take a look at the champion points. So to start off, we have 26 in the Warlord, 9 in Sprinter, and 3 in Bashing Focus. You gotta break free, you gotta sprint, and you gotta bash in that order, and that's why we have the points there. In the Lover Tree, we've got 64 Arcanist for the Magicka recovery, 43 Mooncalf for the Stam recovery, and then 23 in Tenacity for the heavy attacks. Not a huge focus on Tenacity here, simply because we actually don't complete a lot of heavy attacks on our Lightning Staff bar anyway. The Lightning Staff, most of the time, you just get a few ticks off for the most part. So the heavy attack is not a huge part of focus for the sustain. However, it can help with sustain on this build too. The great passive here is Wind Running. We do quite a bit of sprinting thanks to having the Psijic Accelerate skill, so this is going to be great for that Magicka recovery that it provides while sprinting. On top of it, the 2% movement speed cannot be neglected because we are playing a speed build. In the Shadow tree, we've got 51 Tumbling and 31 Shadow Ward. Focus on Tumbling here because, of course, we're going to be doing a lot of rolling on this build for defensive purposes. And then, of course, quite a few points in Tumbling too, because blocking is very important for PvP, and we're going to use that defensively on this build often as well. In the Apprentice tree, we have got 37 Elfborn and 49 Elemental and 44 Spell Erosion. Nice even spread here. Big focus on Elemental Expert for the most part, kind of buffing up those tooltips. So there you go. Nice passives through here as well. And then in the Atronach tree, we've got 59 Staff Expert and 61 Master at Arms. An even spread between these two. If you want to run Elegance, like I had mentioned earlier, then you can definitely put a few more points in Staff Expert and take them out of Master at Arms. The important passive that we get here, of course, is Tactician for that off balance when we roll an attack. We're going to be doing quite a bit of rolling on this build, so we'll get a lot of off balance from it against opposing players. And this is nice too because it's going to offer us a little bit of a stun off a partially charged heavy as well. So something you actually want to keep in mind is that if you're going to Stone Fist someone, make sure that you put the Stone Fist in there right away instead of hitting them with a heavy attack, another skill, and then the Stone Fist afterwards, because you want to make sure you get that primary stun with the Stone Fist. This stun here is going to be more defensive than anything, that, I think, for the most part. And then nothing in the Ritual tree because we are not using any physical stuff and no damage over time. In the Steed tree, we have got 51 Ironclad, 7 Spell Shield, and 61 in Resistant. Focus, of course, on Ironclad Resistant, bulking up our defense against those direct damage attacks because that's what majority of burst abilities are going to be, and bulking up our defense against crits because, well, crits are going to hurt in PvP. Little bit in Spell Shield to give us those front heavy points on spell resistance. In the Lady tree, we've got 36 Light Armor, 16 Thick Skin, 15 Hardy, and 15 Elemental. Big focus on Light Armor focus here to really just buff up our missing physical resistance thanks to us being a Light Armor build. So this is going to make up for that lacking physical resist, which is really, really nice and make us a lot bulkier than we would normally be had we not put the points here. These points here are nice and evenly spread just to give us a little bit of defense against everything. And then finally we have got 49 in Quick Recovery to give us that big bulky heal from our coagulating blood. And there you go. Alright guys, so I know that this is just a short little build, and I actually only played it for like a day and a half, but I have a little bit of footage for you guys, and we have a little bit of PvP commentary. So, to start off, we have this fight here, and as you can see, my friend Aggro just kind of YOLOs in there. He's... oh my gosh, I'm not even sure what to say anymore. He just does this all the time. He's got no respect for the Zerg at all. He just goes right in. Anyway, so I'm just going to stay up here and use my staves to cause a little bit of havoc. And as you can see there, we actually put a lot of damage into that one Sork, and he ended up retreating. I just want to note, I'm sorry at the low quality of the recording here. My recording software, unfortunately, is going all wonky. My computer's just having a lot of trouble, I think, in general with recording nowadays, just kind of showing its age. But I apologize, guys. I'm just in the middle of trying to figure out what's going on with my software here, so this is the best that I could get. Anyhow, as you can see, the Templar comes up there, and the rest of the AD are starting to generate a lot of attention towards us and come up here as well. So I decide to quickly come off the ledge there, just do a nice little jump, showcasing a bit of the speed there. Look at the distance we get there, and then mist around the corner and just kind of use my speed. And I stay by the rocks here, trying to get a good position on them. My friend, unfortunately, he goes for a camp, maybe not noticing that the AD had come around the corner so quickly, so he kind of gets caught in the open field here. So I try to put a bit of damage and stuns into these guys just to give them that kind of range support and keep my wings up here to make sure that no one can really put a lot of pressure into me at a distance. The Sork curse here is going to be a little tricky to deal with, just due to the fact that we can't purge it. That being said, though, we catch him with a really nice heavy attack into the Dragon Leap there and just nuke him really hard. We almost finish off another player here, and then the rest of the yellows converge on us. Unfortunately, my friend had not gone to a better position there. He tried to hold them in the field, and I think they just locked him down super hard. He ended up going down there. So I retreat to the rocks here and just kind of showcasing the movement and the speed there, how we easily kite away from the Zerg, heal up as we need, and pull to a location where we can kind of fight these guys in a little bit more favorable terms with the numbers here. So I have my own little kind of area here, and they're a little hesitant to come down, but I'm going to be patient here, saving my Dragon Leap. I know I'm going to need a nice big leap on these guys. Go for the inhale into the leap, and we get a really nice big combo there, but this guy's pulling a lot of heals on himself, and he's also got a healer standing up here too, so we actually don't manage to put enough damage really into anybody. Just a ton of healing power from these guys. So I just kind of reposition here, work my way around these guys, and another friendly player in my group comes to help out. So we're going to try to sync targets and kind of take these guys down now. I pull back onto the rock here. The big advantage, I think, of this build is that you have a lot of range on your attacks, and so you can really use your terrain, I think, effectively on a spec like this. And at the same time, your attacks are also very, very cheap. Your Stone Fist is really cheap, and then a lot of your damage comes from your heavy attacks. So your attacks are actually going to return a lot of resource. There you see we managed to take the one player down there. Another EP player comes in and starts putting some arrows into these guys. These poor Templars now got to deal with the snipe spam. Big heavy attack on this guy here. We can kind of converge targets, and here comes the big AD group. And unfortunately, I don't make it into my mist form in time coming out of that Dragon Leap. Had I gone for the mist, maybe we could have pulled to the rocks and tried a bit more kite game. But there you go. So for the last little bit here, guys, I have some heavy attack kind of big combo one-shot montage for you. So I hope you guys enjoy these heavy attacks that this build can pull out. This is not with the Elegance, so if you run the Elegance set, your heavy attacks will be stronger on this build. Finally, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to hit that like and or subscribe button if you're new here. And I stream live on Twitch, so if you guys want to catch live streams and catch some live gameplay of me playing all kinds of different specs, sometimes the builds that I play don't make it onto the YouTube channel. You guys can come check that out. And finally, we are sponsored by What the Fast. They are a VPN for gamers. It's a local Canadian company. I've been with them for about half a year now, and they give me 50 better ping on average to ESO. So if you guys are thinking about checking out a VPN, they are free to try in the link in the description below. And yeah, it's been fun playing the dual Destro staff for sure, but I'm moving on to a dual wield Resto staff Mag DK, and it has a really powerful whip. Have a good night, guys.